Let's start today by transporting ourselves to a very specific time and place. It's January 26, 1988. We are in Bunbury, Western Australia.
A quiet coastal city, just a couple of hours south of Perth.
Exactly. And on this particular morning, the people of Bunbury are doing something, well, a bit unusual. They're all lining up at the local banks.
The queues are stretching out the doors right down the street.
But they aren't there because of some stock market crash. They're not panicking.
No, nothing that dramatic.
They are lining up to exchange their old crumpled paper cash for a single specific banknote. It's the new commemorative $10 note.
And when they finally get it, the reaction is just confusion.
It felt wrong in their hands, didn't it?
Completely. It was slippery, glossy. It didn't crumple like a normal bill. It sort of bounced back.
And the most shocking thing, it had a hole in it.
Well, not a hole, exactly.
A window, a clear see-through pane of plastic right in the middle of the money.
It sounded absurd at the time. This was the world's very first polymer banknote.
Plastic money.
Plastic money. And, it's easy for us to be a bit blasé about it now if you're in Canada or the UK or New Zealand. This is just what money looks like.
Right.
But in 1988, this was a massive technological gamble. It had never, ever been done before. Anywhere.
It really does sound like a solution looking for a problem. I mean, paper money had worked for centuries. Why change it? Why risk the national embarrassment of a currency that might, melt in the scorching Australian sun?
Because the paper money was melting. Well, not melting, but it was certainly rotting.
Rotting!
And that's the mission of this deep dive. We're going to unpack how a group of Australian scientists and engineers basically had to reinvent the physical infrastructure of cash for the whole world.
So we're talking about the rotting money crisis, the impossible engineering it took to print on plastic, and how this secret project changed everything.
It really is a story about material science disguised as economics.
Okay, so let's dig into that crisis. You said the money was rotting. That sounds like an exaggeration.
It's really not. You have to remember the Australian climate. It is harsh, especially in the tropical areas up in Queensland, the Northern Territory. You've got this intense heat combined with just incredibly high humidity.
Which is a nightmare for anything made of paper. Or cotton.
Exactly. Traditional banknotes are made of cotton fiber. They're porous. So in those tropical conditions, the notes were just absorbing everything. Moisture, sweat from people's hands, dirt.
Oh, that's disgusting.
It's very gross. They'd become limp, damp, fragile. They were essentially succumbing to fungal growth.
Wait, are you telling me the money in people's pockets was actually getting moldy?
It was basically composting. The Reserve Bank of Australia found that the lifespan of a low-denomination paper note like the $5 bill was only about 6 months.
6 months. That's it. That is a terrible return on investment for any product.
It was a logistical nightmare. And an expensive one. You have to keep printing replacements, shipping them out, destroying the old gross ones.
Yeah.
But the climate was only half the problem.
Let me guess. The other half was criminals.
Counterfeiters. See, in 1966, Australia switched to decimal currency. Almost immediately, realer high-quality forgery started to appear. But by the 70s and 80s, the technology available to the public just exploded.
The rise of the color photocopier.
Precisely. Suddenly, you didn't need a master engraver, you just needed a high-end Xerox machine. The Reserve Bank knew they were sitting on a ticking time bomb.
So paper was too fragile for the climate and way too easy to copy.
They needed something radical.
So they called in the brainiacs.
They did. And this goes back way before 1988. In 1967, the Reserve Bank governor, a man called Nugget Coombs, put together this think tank.
At Mount Threadbow, the ski resort.
Nothing like a ski lodge to solve a tropical money crisis, right? But they brought in top scientists, and this is where the idea of plastic notes was first whispered. The goal was to create something a camera couldn't properly reproduce.
And that's where the CSIRO comes in.
The Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization, Australia's national science agency. The heavy hitters.
And a scientist named David Solomon. Now, when we say plastic, we should be specific. They didn't just melt down some milk jugs, did they?
No, and that's a common misconception.
Yeah.
This is where the science gets really fascinating. The material is called biaxially oriented polypropylene.
Or BOPP. Much catchier.
But a mouthful, yeah.
Yeah.
But the magic isn't just the plastic itself, it's what they do to it. You start with these little beads of polypropylene resin, melt them down, and extrude them into a giant, thin film.
Okay, so at that point, it's like cling wrap, basically. Weak.
Exactly. And if you pulled it, it would just stretch and break. So here's the critical step. They stretch this film 5 to 7 times its size in both directions.
Both directions.
The machine direction and the transverse direction. That's the biaxial part.
Why? What does stretching it do?
Well, it makes it much thinner, about 50 microns thick, which is half the thickness of paper. But more importantly, it completely transforms the molecular structure.
Walk me through that.
Okay, so imagine the molecules in the melted plastic are like a bowl of cooked spaghetti.
Yeah.
Tangled random chaos.
Right.
But when you stretch the film forcefully in both directions, you're forcing all those spaghetti strands to line up. You turn that chaos into a tight, crosshatched lattice.
You're organizing the chaos into strength.
Precisely. You turn a weak film into an incredibly tough substrate that's almost impossible to tear.
I love this story about how they finally convinced the Reserve Bank. Because they were skeptical.
Hugely skeptical.
Yeah.
They just didn't feel like money. So David Solomon, the scientist, had this meeting with the new bank governor, Bob Johnston.
The ultimate pitch meeting.
And Solomon knew he had to nail the feel of it. So he set up a blind field test. He handed Johnston a polymer prototype and a crisp paper note and said, "Tell me the difference without looking." Johnston couldn't. He couldn't tell them apart. That was the green light.
But having a sheet of super strong plastic is one thing. Printing on it must have been a whole different nightmare.
The exact opposite of printing on paper. Think about it. Paper is absorbent. The ink soaks into the fibers and locks in.
Sure.
Plastic is non-porous. it rejects ink. If you just ran this BOPP film through a normal press, the ink would just sit on top and smear right off.
So how did they solve that?
They had to invent a kind of sandwich.
A sandwich?
A sandwich of layers. First, they coated the clear film with multiple layers of white ink-opacifying layers to create a surface that looked and acted a bit like paper.
Okay, but hang on. If they coat the whole thing in white ink, where does the clear window come from?
That's the genius of it.
Yeah.
They don't cut a hole. They simply don't print the white coating in that one specific spot. The window is just the naked, clear substrate itself.
That is such a cool aha moment. So the security feature isn't something they add, it's something they leave out.
Exactly. And for the actual printing, they had to develop entirely new inks that use UV curing.
UV curing, like what a dentist uses to harden a filling.
It's a very similar concept. Instead of waiting for ink to dry, they blast it with high-intensity ultraviolet light. It triggers a chemical reaction that cures the ink instantly, bonding it to the plastic.
What about the texture? Cash has that raised, ridged feeling.
That's intaglio printing. On paper, you get that by pressing the paper into inked grooves with massive pressure. You're basically embossing the paper.
But you can't emboss this plastic, it's too tough.
Right, it just snaps back. So they had to reverse their thinking. Instead of pressing the material down, they developed these thick, viscous inks that would build up on the surface. You're not feeling a dent, you're feeling a tiny mountain of hardened ink.
That is wild. It's engineering on a microscopic scale.
It absolutely is. They had to reinvent printing from the ground up.
So let's get to the big reveal. 1988, the bicentennial. They launched this commemorative $10 note. Let's talk about the design because this thing was busy.
Incredibly detailed. And the centerpiece, of course, was that clear window.
The impossible window.
Right. And from a security standpoint, it was a masterstroke. A color photocopier sees a window and just prints black, or white, or some smudge. It cannot reproduce transparency.
And inside the window, they put that hologram of Captain Cook.
An optically variable device, or OVD. As you move the note, the image would shift and change color. It was beautiful, but also incredibly hard to fake.
The rest of the note had the HMS supply on one side.
And a lineup of people symbolizing the settlers. Then the reverse side featured Aboriginal culture.
Right, an Aboriginal youth painted for ceremony and a morning star pole.
Yes, by the artist Terry Yumbool. And this is where things got a bit complicated.
There was a lawsuit, right?
There was. It became a really important moment in Indigenous copyright law. Terry Yumbool sued the Reserve Bank.
On what grounds?
He argued that while he gave permission for the pole to be reproduced, he was misled about the sheer scale of it on millions of banknotes that would circulate everywhere.
Yeah, that's a massive cultural reproduction.
It was a very complex case, is eventually settled, but it really highlighted that tension between traditional cultural ownership and modern copyright law. A reminder that even these big technological wins have complicated cultural footprints.
So, despite all that, they released the note, 10 million of them, January 1988. Did it work or did it melt?
It worked beautifully. In fact, the durability results were just staggering.
Give me the stats. How tough is this stuff?
Okay, folding. The standard paper note, you fold it back and forth, it tears after a few thousand folds.
Which happens fast if it's in a wallet.
Exactly. The Polymer note. It survived tens of thousands of folds.
Incredible.
And then there's the wash test. We've all done it.
Leaving cash in your jeans pocket.
With paper, you get a ball of mush. With polymer, because it's non-porous and waterproof,
Right.
it just comes out clean.
That's a huge game changer for hygiene, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Much cleaner. But the real economic win was the lifespan. They found that polymer notes lasted 4 to 5 times longer than paper.
So even though they cost more to make,
They were so much cheaper in the long run. The lifespan for a note went from about 6 months to roughly 40 months.
so the experiment is a hit. Australia decides, okay, we're going all in.
Correct. Between 1992 and 1996, they rolled out the full series, the 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 all polymer. The first country in the world to do it.
But they did tweak the design. They dropped the expensive Captain Cook hologram.
They did. They realized the clear window itself was such a powerful security feature that they didn't need the costly OVD for every note.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me. This wasn't just a win for Australia. This became a massive export.
Massive. Australia basically became the world's printer. They set up Note Printing Australia and a joint venture called Securrency, and they started printing notes for other countries.
Who jumped on the bandwagon first?
Mostly countries with similar climate issues. Papua New Guinea, Singapore, Vietnam, Mexico. Places where heat and humidity were just killing paper money.
It makes perfect sense. If you're in the tropics, you need tropical money.
But eventually, even the big economies followed. New Zealand, Romania, and much later, the UK and Canada. That British pound note, or Canadian dollar in your pocket, its technology traces directly back to that CSIRO lab.
And there's an environmental angle too, which is kind of counterintuitive.
It is, isn't it? You hear plastic and think bad. But because the notes last so much longer, you have to produce far fewer of them over time.
And when they finally get too worn out.
They're recycled. They get melted down into pellets and turned into things like plumbing fittings and compost bins.
So my garden shed could be made of old $100 bills.
Potentially, yeah. It closes the loop.
That's fantastic. So bring us to today. The technology hasn't stood still.
Not at all. We're on to the next generation series now. The window isn't just a small porthole anymore. It's a massive top-to-bottom clear strip.
And the effects are much wilder.
Oh yeah, they have these rolling color effects where a band of color seems to move across the note when you tilt it. It's incredible stuff.
And they've improved accessibility.
Yes, a crucial update. The new notes have raised, embossed dots, so people who are blind or have low vision can identify the denomination just by touch.